moving on in terms of parts of speech itself, the first component that we're going to look at is conjunctions. So let's look at our first example. It says, arranging such a large amount of funds now will be a problem. Why? Banks are usually not open so early in the morning. Okay, so we understand conjunctions are linking words, connecting words. They link two parts of speech, or they link two clauses. 2 and 2 make 4. In that example sentence, and is a conjunction connecting two parts of speech. He is 70, yet he is strong. In that example sentence, yet is a conjunction connecting two clauses. He is 70, he is strong. There are two sentences with complete thought. So let's look at this example and understand what conjunction, or if there is a conjunctional error, then let's look at that. Arranging such a large amount of funds now will be a problem is one complete thought, right? That is a consequence. So what is the reason? The reason is given right there. Banks are usually not open so early in the morning. That is your reason. So we have a cause and effect relationship here. But why do I have this question why between these two sentences? Have you heard people say, why were you late? I was late. Why? Because, right? They connect the question and the conjunction, which is incorrect. You're giving a reason, so you only need the reason hint word, which is because. You don't have to add a question in between your explanation or sentence. That's exactly why we don't need why here, right? So we understand that the error is in part 2. We don't need a question in between those two sentences. We need a linking word and a connecting word. So in this context, arranging such a large amount of funds now will be a problem because banks are usually not open so early in the morning. Yes, possible. Arranging such a large amount of funds now will be a problem as banks are usually not open so early in the morning. Sounds right. But what is the right fit? Is it because or as? Let's quickly look at the difference between because and as, and how we apply that in a context. Now, as a conjunction is applied when the reason is very obvious, right? For example, if I say, I went to bed early as I was tired. One of the logical reasons for you going to bed early would be probably you were tired. You had a long, hard day, right? That could be one of the reasons. So when the reason is obvious, you use as. But when the reason is important, or you're not too sure what the reason is, it's critical, but you don't know what it is, then you use because. So in this context, there is not a logical or obvious explanation or reason, but the reason is mentioned, right? Which is not obvious. So that's why we use because and not as. So let's go ahead and make that change. So we substitute why with because. There you go. Right? Let's move to our second example pertaining to conjunctions. She will not attend the meeting until she is asked to. So again, the highlighted word here is until. And my options are except, even with, even except, and unless. And then I have no correction required. Now let's look at our options and see if any of these options fit in the context if I have to substitute until. She will not attend the meeting except she is asked to. Except as a conjunction brings in the meaning of other than, right? Is that the meaning that we need in this context? She will not attend the meeting other than she is asked to? Does not make sense. She will not attend the meeting even with she is asked to. With again is a preposition that brings in the meaning of together, accompany. That is not the meaning we require in this context. And then I have even except, which we already saw the meaning of except. And then we have our fourth option, which is unless. Now unless as a conjunction brings in the meaning of a condition. Something has to happen. Unless this is taken care of, it will not happen, right? So is this context bringing in that meaning? Yes. She will not attend the meeting. What is the condition? She has to be asked, right? So here the right answer to replace until would be unless, bringing in the meaning of a condition. So she will not attend the meeting unless she is asked to. Let's look at our final example and understand conjunctions in depth. Fools rush in when angels fear to tread. the highlighted word or the underlined word is when. Fools rush in when angels fear to tread. Tread vocabulary. If it's a word that you're not familiar with, the meaning of tread is to walk on or to walk along a path, an area. So it's talking about a place. Now, when as a conjunction, we are familiar that it refers to time. But let's look at our options. Option A, because. Option B, if. Option C, where. Is this sentence bringing in a cause and effect or a reason meaning? No. So because is ruled out. Is this sentence bringing in a condition? Do we need a condition here? Is there a condition here? No. If is again is not a logical fit. But where, on the other hand, refers to place. We're familiar with that. So in this context, you replace when with option C. Where. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Talking about the place, the area, which is what is the meaning of the sentence that is projecting. So let's go ahead and make that change. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. We've replaced when with where, option C. So here ends conjunction. Now the first component that we will look at is word class. When it comes to word class, it talks about how one word has different forms. For example, if I take the word inform as a verb, I have been informed of the change in schedule. Right? In that sentence, inform functions as a verb. That's the action word in that sentence. But if I say, have you read the information on the notice board? In that sentence, inform as a word, as a verb, functions as a noun. Information ending with T-I-O-N. Right? Or if I say, this session is informative, or this class is informative. So I have inform describing the class or the session, acting as an adjective, informative. And I also have the adverb form, informedly. You know, you usually form the adverb by adding the suffix ly to the adjective form. So if you notice, one word can have different forms, and it is equally important for you to know all the different forms of each word. Now let's go ahead and apply that technique in our first example for word class, through which we will also learn how to identify, to approach each of those parts. What are some of the clue words or hint words? We will learn that also. Let's look at our first example. The first example is, we had extensively discussions with the participants and obtained their feedback regarding our new services. Alright, so like I said, we're going to approach this looking part by part and understanding what are these little parts of the sentence, these words, and what meaning are they trying to convey. So let's look at our first part. We have extensively discussions. Now in that part, can you identify the noun? We had extensively discussions. What is the noun in that? Correct. We understand it's discussions, right? Most of my noun forms end with IONS, NENT, TY, ION, TION, right? So it's easy for me to figure out the noun, discussions. Okay. Now what is this word in front of discussions? Extensively. I know the form tells me it's an adverb because it ends with ly, right? But this word is only acting as additional information about the discussions. It's giving me information about what sort of discussions. And I already know that all my describing words are adjectives. So how do I change this extensively, which is an adverb form, to an adjective form? Simple. I go ahead and delete the ly. So there you go. We had extensive discussions with the participants and obtained their feedback regarding our new services. So this becomes the changed sentence, the corrected sentence, where we've gone ahead and changed the adverb, which is not required in this context, changed it to an adjective form, which is exactly what we need, modifying or describing the noun discussions. So the error for us here is in part 1. Let's move to our second example. Example 2. Building biogas plants help to reduce the consuming of conventional fuels such as firewood and kerosene. Alright. So again, let's apply the same strategy. We go part by part. Building biogas plants. Again, building, verb plus ing, is a gerund. It's functioning like a noun. Building biogas plants help to reduce what? The consuming. Another tip to identify nouns is your articles, your definite article and your indefinite article. Usually, articles precede the nouns, making reference to the nouns, right? A boy walked into the room. The boy was wearing, or the boy was wearing a blue shirt. Now in that example sentence, a boy, so it could be any boy, right? An indefinite number, not being specific. But in the second sentence I said the boy was wearing a blue shirt. So I'm making reference to the same boy, but I'm being more specific. So we understand what the difference between indefinite and definite articles. But in this context, I'm saying usually articles precede noun forms. But after the, I have consuming, which is a verb form, right? A continuous tense verb form, consuming with an ing. How do I change this to a noun form? So if I take the base verb consume, consume, consumed, consuming. If I take the base verb consume, which is the first verb, how do I change that to a noun form? Pretty simple. Let's go ahead and do that. Consumption, right? So that's our corrected version right there. Building biogas plants help to reduce what? Help to reduce the consumption of conventional fuels such as firewood and kerosene. So the error is in part 3 for example 2. So do you realize how we've applied how to identify which form is required in a sentence? Do I need an adjective form? Do I need an adverb form? Or do I need a noun form? Or simply the verb itself will suffice to complete the sentence meaningfully and grammatically? Let's look at one more example to identify word class. Also please be aware that the various forms. In these two examples, what we saw is a sentence divided into 4 parts. But there are other variations where a couple of words are highlighted in the sentence, wherein we are required to substitute them from the given options. So that's what we're going to look at next in our third example. So example 3. Aerobics is found to be of extremely helpful to diabetic patients. So the phrase highlighted is extremely helpful. And let's look at our options. Option A, extremely helpful. Option B, of extreme help. Option C, of extremely helpful. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I think only A is correct, I'm going to click, or I'm going to select 1. If I think only option B is correct, I will select 2. If I think only C is correct, I will select option 3. Or if I think either A or B will fit in this context, I will select option 4. But if I feel the highlighted phrase in the sentence is grammatically correct as it is and no correction is required, then I will select option 5. But let's fall back on our sentence and understand the meaning that it's conveying. Aerobics is found to be of what to diabetic patients? Here again, another tip for you to identify the noun form. It answers the question, what? Right? So in this context, we've looked at 3 things when we were approaching word class, especially pertaining to nouns. We said, how do I identify nouns? Usually nouns end with T-I-O-N, S-I-O-N, T-Y, M-E-N-T, E-N-C-E. Also, we said articles precede the nouns. The third thing that we looked at is it answers the question, what? Right? So if I look at my options, extremely I know is an adverb form. Helpful I know is an adjective form. How do I know that? ly suffix, helpful. Help would be the noun form. He is helpful. I received help from so and so person. I received what? Noun form, help. That person was very helpful. Helpful describing that person, adjective. But we already made it clear that we need a noun form in this context. Aerobics is found to be of what to diabetic patients? Of which is the option that is giving me the noun form? Option B. I have of extreme help, right? So extreme here is the adjective describing the noun form help. So let's go ahead and close word class, wherein we looked at 3 different examples to understand this. Our next part of speech that we're going to look at is prepositions. Now, what are prepositions? Prepositions, we know, display, time, direction, right? Placement, location. That's the meaning that prepositions bring in. And without prepositions, we know that the sentence is incomplete. The meaning is awkward. Correct? So if I say the paper is the table, it doesn't make sense. The paper is on the table, right? I need that preposition on to bring in the meaning of it's on the surface. The paper is lying on the surface of the table. So I understand that without prepositions, the sentences are meaningless and incomplete and sounds awkward. Let's look at our first example. The board's decision has provided employees with the opportunity to acquire up to 100 shares by the company. Alright, so the sentence is divided into 4 parts. Okay, so let's approach this. The board's decision has provided, let's understand the meaning of the context. The board's decision has provided employees with the opportunity to acquire up to 100 shares by the company. One way in which you can arrive at which part has the error is understanding the context, also asking questions if you are not figuring out the meaning the context is trying to convey. So for example, we understand that there are 2 parties involved here. The employees is one party, the company is the other party. So what's happening here? There is a decision made by the board, and what is the opportunity that the employees have or what the company is giving. So the shares, which is the main component, belongs to the company, and the company is deciding to give that, the employees with the opportunity to acquire 100 shares. So we understood the meaning of the context. Now let's go part by part and see if each part is conveying the right meaning. The board's decision has provided, so the action has started sometime in the past, right, and it is continuing up till now. Employees, who? Employees with what? The opportunity to acquire up to 100 shares. Okay, is it by the company or of the company, right? So in this context, we need to look at whose shares are we talking about. The shares that belong to the company. So we're looking at a preposition that brings in the meaning of possession. By, on the other hand, gives us various meanings. I could say, I live by the sea. In that context, by is bringing in the meaning of next to the sea. Or I could say, I drove past your house in the morning. Or I drove by your house in the morning. So in that context, by is giving me the meaning of I passed your house. Right? So in various contexts, by has different meanings, but in this context, we're looking at a preposition that brings in the meaning of possession. So we make that change, and the error is in part 4. Right? So we change by to of. The board's decision has provided employees with the opportunity to acquire up to 100 shares of the company and not by the company. Let's move on to our next example. Over 80% from us feel that if we had taken some corrective measures earlier, the crisis could have been averted. Okay, so we have again 4 parts. Let's understand the meaning the context is trying to convey. And we can also look for hint words and keywords and clue words in the context that can help us identify which part has the error or could have the error. Over 80% from us feel that if we had taken some corrective measures earlier, the crisis could have been averted. Over 80%. Over here again brings in the meaning of more than 80%. So over in this context bringing in the meaning of more than as a preposition. And then I have from us feel. So feeling is something that people experience, go through, which is again something that is exclusive to you. It's a personal. An experience itself is personal, right? So is it happening from us? Or what is the preposition that I need here? From as a preposition can have different meanings again based on the context. From as a preposition brings in the meaning of origin. Where are you from? I'm from Bhopal. I'm from Rameshwar. It can also bring in the meaning of source of information. Where did you hear about this course? I heard it from my friend. Your friend becomes the source of information. There in that context, that's the meaning that it conveys. It can also bring in the meaning of cause or reason, right? I suffer from cold. The reason why you could not attend something or you were absent for something. It can also bring in the meaning of start of a range of series, right? Or start of a period of time. I'm planning to start gym from Monday, right? So in this context, I need a preposition, not with all these meanings, I need a preposition where a personal experience is happening, right? Feel is your hint word right there. So you change from to a preposition that brings in the meaning of possession, which is of. We just looked at that in our previous example. So let's go ahead and make that change. The error is in part 1. So over 80% of us feel that if we had taken some corrective measures earlier, the crisis could have been averted. Let's look at our final example. It became clear that the strangers were heading into a serious disaster. And the highlighted word is into. And my options are along, towards, on, and no improvement. So it became clear that the strangers were heading into a serious disaster. Now let's look at our options. Into, the highlighted preposition in the context. What meaning does it convey? Into conveys a meaning of to the inside of, or a change of condition, right? Water turned into wine, or water turned into blood. There's a change of condition happening. Or I entered into the room searching for something, to the inside of. In this context, these two meanings do not apply. Let's look at our options. Along. Along as a preposition brings in the meaning of on the path of, by the side of, right? Towards brings in the meaning of in the direction of. So in terms of two words coming together, set expressions giving a meaning, which is nothing but collocations, which we will look at in the following classes. However, now you would have heard people use heading into or heading towards, which is a more probable collocation here in this context. And on, again, we just saw that in our previous example, on as a preposition brings in the meaning of lying on the surface of. It became clear that strangers were heading on a serious disaster. Incorrect. It became clear that the strangers were heading towards a serious disaster in the direction of. That's the right preposition, bringing in the meaning that is required in this context. So here we replace into with toward and click option B. It became clear that the strangers were heading towards a serious disaster. Let's look at our fourth component, which is personal and reflexive pronouns. Now pronouns I know are noun substitutes, noun equivalents, right? Ram is an intelligent boy. He is also very impulsive. So in that context, I know Ram is the noun, but I am substituting Ram with he, which is my pronoun. So we are aware of our personal pronouns. He, she, it, they, we, I, you. Correct? Now what are these reflexive pronouns? Reflexive pronouns is where the action is happening upon oneself. So you have myself, yourself, himself, herself, ourselves, themselves. So these are all reflexive pronouns. Now let's look at our first example to understand how we can identify reflexive pronouns as an error in a context. The first example, it says, myself and Gopal will take care of the function on Sunday. So the sentence is divided into 4 parts, and then I have no error. Now, tip, or rather a rule that you will have to remember is a sentence will never begin with a reflexive pronoun. So in this context, the sentence begins with myself and Gopal, which is incorrect. How do I change this to ensure that the subject and the object is in the right place? Let me give you an example for you to approach this in a simpler form. Let's say if I said, I played tennis So in that sentence, I play tennis, I is the subject, play is the verb, tennis is the object, which is also a noun, right? A name of a sport. I play tennis. Sheila helped me. So in the second part of the sentence, Sheila is my subject, helped is the verb, me is the object, correct? So did you notice where I and me came in that example sentence? I played tennis, I subject, Sheila helped me object. So in this context, how do I identify the subject? I identify the verb and I put the question who or what. That becomes my subject. So in this example sentence, myself and Gopal will take care of the function on Sunday. I know that the sentence cannot begin with a reflexive pronoun myself. Okay, so I still need to change it to the right subject. So how do I interchange that? Some of you might be thinking, could it be Gopal and me? Gopal and myself? Gopal and I? Which is the right option here? Now, in the example sentence that I gave you, in the subject place, did I come or me come? I played tennis, Sheila helped me. I came, right? So who will take care of the function on Sunday? Gopal and I. So that's your answer right there. The error is in part 1. Let's go ahead and make that change. Gopal and I will take care of the function on Sunday. Let's look at our second example. Please try to understand that the dispute on this issue is between my brother and myself and concerns nobody else. Again, the sentence is divided into 4 parts. Now let's understand, is it in the subject place or the object place, and what do I require? Please try to understand that the dispute on this issue is between my brother and myself and concerns nobody else. Now, I might think, well, myself, the sentence is not starting with a reflexive pronoun. It's coming somewhere towards the end of the sentence. So, does it take up a subject place or an object place? What do I change there, or do I need to change anything at all? Please try to understand that the dispute on this issue, the dispute is the subject here, right? On this issue is between my brother and who? My brother and I, or my brother and me. It's coming at the object place. So in this context, the error is in part 3. You say my brother and me. You don't say so-and-so and myself, which is again incorrect. So let's go ahead and make that change. My brother and me. So the error is in part 3. Please try to understand that the dispute on this issue is between my brother and me and concerns nobody else. Let's look at one more example to understand this. Since we are friends, there should be no secret between you and I. Okay, this is an easy one because I'm familiar where the subject or the object is placed. Since we are friends, subject, there should be no secret between you and, again, the object place. Let's fall back on our example. I play tennis, Sheila helped me. I is in the subject place, me is in the object place. So here I have you and I, which is in the object place, but what has to be substituted or replaced? I, because I always comes in the subject place and not in the object place. So since we are friends, there should be no secret between you and me. Alright, so here ends personal and reflexive pronouns, and for us to be able to identify where they are placed. So when do I ever use reflexive pronouns? When the action is happening to oneself. So I can say, I cut myself, while I was cooking. I cut myself while I was cooking. I hurt myself when my foot hit the table. Right? So the action is happening to oneself, then you use your reflexive pronouns. Let's move on to our next component, which is relative pronouns. So what are these relative pronouns? I'm familiar with personal pronouns, which we just saw. I'm familiar with reflexive pronouns. I'm even aware of possessive pronouns, right? Hers, his, yours, ours, correct? But what is this relative pronouns? A relative pronouns are nothing but pronouns that relate to something, right? For example, if I say, this is the pen which I lent to so and so, or this is the pen which I borrowed from so and so, right? So that which in that example sentence is making reference or relating to the pen, right? Now when it comes to relative pronouns, we usually use who with people. This is the boy who we met yesterday, or this is the boy whom we met yesterday. In the object place you use whom, or in the subject place you use who. So whom for people. You also use that for people. You use which for things. You use whose for possessions. Brings in a possessive meaning. Then you use whose. Whose umbrella is this? Alright, I'm just giving you an example sentence. So we have who, whom, that, which, whose. So all these are relative pronouns because they relate to something in the context. Let's look at our first example. While providing such facilities online makes it convenient and easily accessible for customers, we face challenges. Alright, so the sentence itself sounds a little off, but which part is off? Let's find that out. While providing such facilities online makes it convenient and easily accessible for customers, we face challenges. So let's look at the first part. So the first part is talking about while providing such facilities, online makes it convenient and easily accessible for customers, we face challenges. It is talking about an online platform that is making things easier and more comfortable for customers. And who are these customers? Who is facing the challenges? The customers, right? So in this context, what is the pronoun or relative pronoun that we need, and where do we need to fit that? While providing such facilities, online makes it convenient and easily accessible for customers. Now also understand the error is in part 4. Why is that? What is this we doing here? We're talking about the customers who are the ones who are facing the challenges, right? So this we is a what? It's personal pronoun. I, you, he, she, it, we, they, right? It's a personal pronoun. Now I don't need a personal pronoun here. I need a pronoun that brings in a relation between who is facing the challenges. The customers are facing the challenges, and we're not talking about all the customers. We're talking specifically about customers who are facing challenges. So when you are limiting information, right, when you're segregating, then you use that for people. So here in this context, while providing such facilities, online makes it convenient and easily accessible for customers that face challenges. So let's make that change. So the error is in part 4. You change we, a personal pronoun, which is not making any sense in the context. I need a relative pronoun that brings in the relation between the customers facing the challenges. The customers are the ones that are facing the challenges. Okay, let's look at our second example. At a time which most firms were finding it difficult to raise money, we succeeded in raising the necessary funds. Okay, so we understand that, the relative pronoun here is which, but is this the right pronoun that I need in this context? I know which is a pronoun used to relate to things, but I have a clue word or a phrase here where I know a clear pronoun which is required in this context. At a time. What is a pronoun which brings in the meaning of time? When, right? So that's your clue word or phrase, making it easier for you to replace which is the incorrect pronoun, relative pronoun, to when. So here we have the right pronoun. The error is in part 1. At a time when most firms are finding it difficult to raise money, we succeeded in raising the necessary funds. Let's look at one more example to understand relative pronouns. The Union Health Minister said that there was an acute shortage of health personnel in rural areas who needed to be addressed urgently. Okay, so again the sentence is divided into 4 parts. We need to understand or identify which part has the error. The Union Health Minister said what? that there was an acute shortage. So that's my subject, the acute shortage of health personnel in rural areas who needed to be addressed urgently. Now, again, which is the relative pronoun here? I have who, which is the relative pronoun here. That is mentioned, but it is not functioning as a relative pronoun in this context. The Union Health Minister said that there was an acute shortage of, it's not relating to anything here in this context. So let's rule out that. The only other pronoun that is relating to something in the context is who. But for us, we need to identify the who is relating to what, which is the subject here. Most of us can get confused thinking the health personnel is the subject. But do not be confused by prepositional phrases. Of health personnel, right, is additional information. The subject is still an acute shortage. The Union Health Minister said that there was what? An acute shortage. So here it's a situation, it's a thing that we're referring to. So we replace who, which is a relative pronoun addressing people, to which. Let's make that change. So the error is in part 4. We change who to which. The Union Health Minister said that there was an acute shortage of health personnel in rural areas which needed to be addressed urgently. Alright, so when it comes to relative pronouns, we understand what are the relative pronouns: who, which, that, whose, whom, and when and where, right? When is for time, where is for place. We've also looked at being very particular about what the subject is and who is and what is that the relative pronoun is relating to in the context, right? So based on the meaning that the context is giving, we identify the right relative pronouns. Always also understand the difference between that and who, which is usually used when there's additional information, right? That, on the other hand, is used when you're limiting information, when you're segregating something from a whole lot. Keep that in mind.